They say nothing good happens under a dark moon, that when the moon fades into shadow and darkness spreads its wings, secrets come alive, cryptids roam the land, spirits whisper in the dark, and devilish beings wait patiently for you just around the corner. But this isn't a warning. It's an invitation. You're about to leave the world you know. You're going to step into a place where the strange is common, the shadows speak, and secrets insist on being heard, and nothing stays buried for long. Welcome. Let's see what we encounter under a dark moon. Never play hide-and-seek beneath a full moon. I should have listened to the warnings. I should have known exactly what kind of trouble I was inviting from playing such a simple, innocent game. A child's game. It started a week ago on a warm summer evening, the kind of evening where the rest of the world felt far away, and all that occupied my mind was drinking cool lemonade and watching butterflies chase the breeze. I sat on a low brick wall, swinging my legs idly as I waited for my friends to show up. It was the middle of July, and the air tasted sweet with flowers and fruit from the orchard over the bridge. Our village was a small, rural settlement miles away from town, and only a few kids my age lived this far out, which meant we naturally hung out together to stave away the boredom of a place like this. Alicia arrived first, waving at me as she crested the brow of the hill, her long dark hair billowing out behind her in the warm breeze. She walked over to me and hopped up on the wall, popping a piece of strawberry-scented gum into her mouth. She was 14, a couple of years older than me, and I had always admired her natural self-assurance. She didn't care what anyone thought, and she did whatever suited her. "Want a piece?" she offered, sticking a tube of gum in my face. I nodded, and she shook one out into my hand. I began chewing, the fragrant taste filling my mouth as we sat in silence. The next to show up was Jordan, a quiet boy who could usually be found reading under the large oak tree in the field between our houses. Sometimes we had to go and physically drag him away from that cool, shady spot to hang out with us. May and Isaac, the twins who lived over the bridge, they were the last to show up. They both had wavy blonde hair and sparkling blue eyes, and their penchant for speaking simultaneously sometimes gave me the creeps. Once the 5 of us were assembled, Alicia and I hopped off the wall and started walking along the grass, catching up on how we'd spent the rest of our day. May and Isaac had taken their bikes out to the woods and played on the river swing. Jordan spent it reading at the small local library. Alicia worked a few hours at the local grocery store. I had helped my mother in the greenhouse and then lounged in the garden eating ice lollies. "I got bored earlier and did a bit of research into local history," Jordan mentioned casually as we walked. Alicia rolled her eyes. "We don't want to hear some crummy old history lesson," she said. Jordan's eyes narrowed a little. "Not even if it's spooky?" Alicia studied him. "Spooky? What do you mean?" "I was looking into the history of some of the farmsteads around here, just for fun. It was surprising how many people died around the village, especially children. Now, some people said the land was cursed, though more likely it was just illness and poverty. But anyway, there was one story that kind of creeped me out." "Well, it doesn't take much to creep you out, though," May pointed out. Jordan waved her off. "Do you want to hear the story or not?" "Wait, let's go into the woods while you tell us," Alicia suggested, diverting us onto the track that led into the dense copse of cedarwood in the distance. "It'll make it more spooky," she said. Jordan shifted uncomfortably, but he didn't put up an argument, and the 5 of us traipsed over to the trees. As soon as we were beneath the dense canopy, everything went still, quiet. We could no longer hear the breeze rustling through the grasses or the birds twittering. It was like stepping into a bubble, closed off from everything else. "Spooky," May and Isaac said in a matching sing-song voice, grinning widely. Jordan visibly shuddered. "All right, tell us the story then," Alicia prompted, as we trudged slowly through the woods, picking over the thick underbrush and batting aside long overhanging branches. Clearing his throat, Jordan's voice sounded even smaller among the dense, towering trees as he began to speak. "I'm sure you all know about Inglewood Farm, that cluster of old, abandoned buildings that the bus always passes on the way to school. Well, about 30 years ago, a family used to live and work there. They had a 7-year-old daughter who often spent her time playing around and inside the farmstead buildings. She didn't have any friends her age, so she was usually on her own." He paused here, glancing around to make sure that everyone was still listening. We all remained silent. Around us, the branches swayed silently, and the sky temporarily darkened as a cloud passed over the sun, lengthening the shadows at our feet. "Anyway," he said, "one evening the mother noticed that her daughter wasn't in the house and went out to look for her. It was already getting dark by then, and she was worried that she'd lost track of time while out playing. They searched the fields and all the buildings, but they couldn't find her anywhere. All the neighboring farms got involved, and eventually the police too, but their daughter had seemingly gone missing." My heartbeat began to quicken involuntarily in my chest, and I was clenching my palms at my sides. Despite his nervousness, Jordan was a really good storyteller and had us all hanging on to his every word. "Well, they found her body almost a week later," he continued, his eyes darkening as he frowned. "She had been playing in one of the barns where they stored some of their equipment, and she had somehow fallen off one of the upper levels, breaking her neck. Her body had gotten crushed behind the giant wheels of the tractor they stored inside there, and it wasn't until the father moved it that they finally found what had happened to her." Silence threaded between us all as Jordan finished. "How tragic," Isaac said. "Yeah, but I wouldn't call that spooky," Alicia said, breaking the tension. "Accidents like that happened all the time back then. Sad, sure, but not spooky." Jordan's frown deepened. "I'm not finished yet," he said with a bit of a huff. "The family left shortly after the death of their daughter, and a new family moved in. But they didn't stay there long. According to the records, nobody who bought that farm stayed for very long, until eventually it was taken off the market and left to fall into ruin. People who visit the farm say they've seen the spirit of a little girl walking around, looking for someone to play with her." Alicia snorted. "Of course they do," she said. "Don't you believe in ghosts?" I asked her. Alicia's dark eyebrows arched. "No. Do you?" I quickly shook my head, though it wasn't a question I'd given much thought to. I had never experienced anything myself, after all. I had no reason to believe. By the time we left the woods, it was already starting to get dark. Time had passed much quicker than expected, and the sun was dipping low on the horizon, dusk just starting to bruise the edges of the sky. "I have to get home now," Jordan said as we headed back to the brick wall that ran along the main path into the village. "Us too," May and Isaac said. After bidding farewell to the others, it was just Alicia and I. She eyed me up curiously. "Do you need to get home yet?" I hesitated, then shrugged. Not really. I mean, my mother didn't like me staying out too late, but our village had always been relatively safe, the kind of place where you kept your doors unlocked and trusted your neighbors. Crime in these parts didn't usually extend beyond petty stealing and the occasional drunken brawl. Good, Alicia said with a grin. Let's go visit Inglewood Farm. I blinked at her, wondering if I had heard her right. What? I said. The farm, you know, that Jordan just told us about. I want to go check it out. I stared at her, fighting the flutter of apprehension in my stomach. Why? Because it sounds fun, Alicia said, shrugging nonchalantly. And neither of us believe in ghosts, right? So what's the harm? It's getting dark, I pointed out. An impish smile touched her lips. Even better, she said. If you don't want to come along, that's fine, but I'm going anyway. She was already walking away, leaving me in the dust. Part of me wanted to go home and forget about it, but I really didn't want Alicia to think I was boring. Plus, I didn't like the idea of her going there alone when it was starting to get dark. Wait, I said, stuttering as I hurried to catch up. Alicia said nothing, but the look she gave me made me feel like I had made the right choice. We walked in silence down the long stretch of road towards the outskirts of the village, where fields and farmsteads populated the horizon. Like Jordan had mentioned, Inglewood Farm was visible from the road that we took on the way to school, though I had never given it much thought before. To me, it was just another cluster of abandoned buildings, like the rest of the landscape around here. Old, crumbling ruins and untilled fields. As we neared the structure, the sky above us darkened further, and I felt a flicker of regret. Was it really a good idea coming out here this late? Worried that my mother might be wondering where I was, I sent her a quick text, telling a minor white lie that I was hanging out at Alicia's. She didn't have to know where I really was. Even when the sun fully disappeared over the hill, the summer sky remained light enough for us to see by. I was careful where I put my feet, not wanting to step in any ditches or boggy parts. It had rained a lot the day before, and the soil was still wet, sucking at my shoes as I trudged through it. We finally reached the first building of the Inglewood farmstead, and Alicia shot me a grin. Here we are, she said. Yeah, I murmured, glancing around. It didn't look much more appealing up close. Crumbling bricks, piles of debris, rusted tools, and thick, overgrown grass choked with weeds. What you'd expect from a farm that had been abandoned for so long. Look, that must be the barn where the little girl died, Alicia said, pointing to a large wooden structure with half the roof missing. Let's check it out, she said. Alicia was already moving towards it with long, determined strides, leaving me no choice but to follow. I flicked a glance around at the other buildings, feeling uncomfortable, but I reminded myself this place was abandoned. Nobody else was here, just us. Just before we entered the barn, I shot a glance at the sky. Dusk was turning the horizon a deep purplish gray, and I noticed the moon was already out, large and pale and round, a full moon. Coming? Alicia's voice chased away my thoughts, and I hurried after her into the barn. Inside smelt foul, rotten hay, and the lingering trace of old animal waste, and years' worth of dust and mildew and damp infecting the corners of the building. My eyes watered at the denseness of the air. Although there were gaps in the roof and the windows, the air inside still felt untouched, like no one had been here since the last family moved out over 20 years ago. "So," Alicia said, "how about a game of hide and seek?" I shot her a bewildered look. "Hide and seek?" I echoed, uncertain I had heard her right. Alicia nodded. "Yeah, don't you think it'll be fun?" I glanced around at the rusted equipment and the stacks of old rotten hay and mildew-infected loose floorboards. "Won't it be kind of dangerous?" I asked. Alicia laughed, the sound echoing oddly inside the building. "That's what makes it fun," she said with a wink. "You want to hide or seek first?" I swallowed down the lump of nervousness in my throat and shrugged. "I guess I'll hide," I said, trying to match her careless, unburdened energy. "Nothing bad would happen," I said to myself. Like she said, it was just a bit of fun. "All right," Alicia said. "I'll stand outside and count to 60. You'd better hurry up and hide." She disappeared outside the barn, and I found myself alone with the shadows. A chill touched my neck, creeping down my spine. The sky was still visible through the hole in the roof above, the round, full moon trickling pale light at my feet. I had an aunt that firmly believed in the supernatural, and she always used to say the veil between worlds was thinner on a full moon, though that was only if you actually believed in that sort of stuff, which I didn't. Realizing I was wasting time staring at the moon, I quickly looked around for a place to hide. There weren't many spots on the ground level, and my gaze automatically lifted to the upper level. Half of it was solid floor, while the other half turned into a walkway overlooking the ground. Maybe there was somewhere to hide up there, I thought. I walked over to the rickety-looking stairs and tested the first couple with my foot. They groaned, but they didn't bend, and I slowly climbed them, my heart thundering in my ears every time the board felt like it was about to give way. By the time I reached the top, I was breathless from anxiety. I couldn't hear Alicia counting, but she had to be nearing the end of the minute. I frantically scanned the area around me. More pieces of old equipment, stacks of damp, rotten hay, and half-rusted tools that had fallen over in a haphazard pile. There was a giant wheelbarrow on the one side of the room, so I hurried over and crouched behind it. It was a fairly obvious hiding place, but there weren't many other options, and I wasn't in the mood to be creative with it. Just being here was making me nervous. Around me, the night went quiet. All I could hear was the wind whistling through the broken roof and my own pounding heart. But I could not hear Alicia. For a heart-wrenching second, I wondered if she had left me here alone, but I quickly shook that thought away. She liked teasing people, yes, but she wasn't cruel. She wouldn't do something like that. So why hadn't she come back inside the barn yet? I peeked over the edge of the wheelbarrow, my eyes picking through the gathering darkness, and I saw something that made me freeze. Directly across from me, someone was crouching behind the stacks of hay. My heart leapt into my throat as I stared at the shadow. Clearly, it was the silhouette of someone hunching over. If I squinted hard, I could just make out strands of dark hair poking out over the hay. Alicia? But why was she hiding? Wasn't she supposed to be looking for me? And when had she climbed up here without me noticing or hearing? My heart pounded in my chest. My mouth went dry, trying to make sense of it. I stood up, moving out from behind the wheelbarrow, and I slowly tiptoed toward the crouching figure. A flutter of hesitation almost pulled me back, but I shook it off. Just as I was reaching towards the shadow, a hand suddenly grabbed my shoulder, and I spun around with a scream. Alicia stumbled back in surprise. "Whoa," she said. "It's just me." She was arching a brow at me as I stood there, breathing heavily. "That wasn't a very good hiding place," she said. I stared at her, dumbfounded. But if Alicia was behind me, then who? I quickly spun around, facing the hay again, and I felt my heart sink low into my stomach. The shadow was gone. Had I just imagined it? But the hair. I had definitely seen hair. Hadn't I? "Meg, are you okay?" Alicia asked, touching my arm again. "Have you been freaking yourself out or something?" I thought, and then I quickly swallowed my words. If I told her I thought that I had seen something, would she believe me? Or would she think that I was just being silly, imagining things in the dark? I took a deep breath and dragged my eyes away from the hay. "Sorry, it's nothing." She studied my face for a moment, then shrugged. "Well, that was kind of a fail. Want to try again?" I shook my head no. "Not tonight," I said. "I'm getting pretty tired." And I was, and I really wanted to get the heck out of there. "Did you see her?" I shot Alicia a sharp look. Who? Who did I see?" "You know, the little girl, the one who died here," she said. Alicia's tone seemed serious, but I saw the flicker of amusement in her gaze. She was teasing me. "No, I didn't," I said, clenching my jaw. "But this place stinks, and it's starting to give me a headache." She finally relented. All right, let's leave." We climbed back down to the ground level in silence. I wasn't lying when I said I had a headache. I could feel a growing pressure right behind my eyes, spreading to my temples. Right now, I just wanted to go home, lay down, and forget about the shadow I'd seen. Alicia kept shooting me curious glances as we left Inglewood Farm and headed back towards the village. But I didn't entertain them. "Are you sure you're all right?" Alicia asked as we reached the village and stood beneath one of the glowing amber street lamps. Above us, the sky was almost fully dark now. "Yeah, I'm good," I said. "Sorry to cut the evening short." I said it, but not quite meeting her eye. "We'll hang out again tomorrow, okay?" I was already walking away before Alicia could answer, something I never normally did. She always walked away first. My mother was sat sewing in the living room when I got home. She glanced up at me, smiling. "Have a nice evening with Alicia?" "Yeah, it was fun. I'm a little tired, though, so I think I'll head straight to bed." "All right, sweetie. Good night," she said. I jogged upstairs to my room and closed the door, finally collapsing onto my bed with a deflating sigh. I didn't know why I let the shadow in the barn bother me so much. It was probably nothing, just a trick of the eye, fueled by Jordan's story and my aunt's old warning. But still, I couldn't shake this feeling of unease, that there had been something there. I just didn't know what. I got ready for bed and climbed beneath the covers, staring through the window at the full moon until my eyes grew heavy. Just before I fell asleep, I thought I saw a shadow crouching behind my desk chair, hiding amongst the darkness, but I was already drifting off before I could fully register it. That night I dreamt I was playing hide-and-seek with a girl I did not recognize. She was much younger than me, maybe between 7 and 8, with dark hair and big brown eyes. She told me to count while she went to hide, and then she disappeared into the old barn, her laughter distorted on the breeze. Her strange whispering voice was still echoing in my ears when I awoke the next morning. "Come find me." I opened my eyes, feeling groggy and drained, like I hadn't slept at all. But I tried to shake it off and get on with the day. The sky had turned overcast, deep gray clouds hiding the sun and making the shadows seem denser than usual. As I helped my mother with our usual chores, I kept feeling a strange prickle on the back of my neck, like I was being watched. Several times I thought I glimpsed something out the very corner of my eye, vague, fleeting shadows, hiding behind the fridge, crouching behind the sideboard in the hallway, even peeking out from behind the sofa when I walked past the doorway. But every time I turned to look at it, there was nothing there after all, just tricks of the mind. I really must have gotten less sleep than I thought last night. I tried my best to ignore it, but the knot of anxiety in my chest kept growing as the day wore on, following me into my dreams once again that night. This time, I dreamt that the mysterious girl and I were playing hide-and-seek in my own house. The dream ended when I found her crumpled up in the top of the towel cupboard, her arms and legs folded at impossible angles. I woke up feeling sick and disturbed, and I spent most of the day moping around in my room, listening to music, drawing, and doing everything I could to forget about it. But the strange, haunting feeling that something had followed me back from the barn continued over the next several days, until exactly a week after visiting the barn with Alicia, when I woke in the middle of the night to a startling and sudden fear that I hadn't had since I was young. "There's something under my bed." I immediately tried to dismiss the thought. I was too old to be scared of a made-up boogeyman hiding in my room. But somehow I couldn't shake the fear. It felt so real and concrete in my mind, I was convinced it was true. Where had it come from, this absurd and unsettling thought? The feeling that I wasn't alone in my room, that something was hiding in the shadows beneath my bed. And what if it wasn't just an absurd and irrational fear? What if it was real? I stared up at the ceiling, too terrified to move, trying to keep my breathing calm. The darkness inside my room felt way too thick, undisturbed by the pale moonlight peeking through the curtains. I thought about the girl in my dreams. Was it her? Was she the one hiding beneath my bed? Was she the little girl who had died in the barn? Had she followed me here? It made no sense. In my head, I tried to come up with a more rational explanation, but I couldn't. As much as I wanted to ignore these fears and go back to sleep, I couldn't. Some part of my mind was urging me to check, to look if there was really something under my bed, or if it was all simply in my head. I sat up, the sheets trailing along my arms as my heart quickened against my throat. Gripping the edges of the frame, I slowly lowered my head over the side, my hair dangling against the floor as I peered beneath my bed. Shadows pooled in the open space, my eyes struggling to pick through the gloom. But just for a second, I saw something. A puddle of dark hair, and the faint glint of moonlight hitting someone's eyes. Stifling a scream, I yanked my head back up, and I threw the covers over my whole body, shaking beneath them as my thoughts spun wildly through my mind. No way, that wasn't real. I'm just seeing things. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. There's nothing. But somewhere inside my room, perhaps under my bed, perhaps somewhere else, I heard the faintest trace of a whisper. Your turn. My blood went cold, running through my body like ice, making it harder to breathe. My turn? My turn what? To hide? Fear trickled down my spine. What was I supposed to do? If I just ignored it, would it go away? I already knew the answer. The only way to make her, or whatever it was, leave me alone was to finish the game. I had to do what she said. I had to hide. I peeled the covers off of me, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out the sounds of my own panicked breathing as I darted my eyes around the room. I couldn't see anything. If she was still here, she was hidden amongst the shadows. But where was I supposed to hide? How much time did I have? My gaze landed on my closet. There was nowhere else I could go. In one swift movement, I leapt off my bed and fled into the closet, one of those old-fashioned units with slatted doors. Buried amongst the soft fabric of my clothes, I clamped a hand over my mouth and tried to minimize the sounds I made as much as possible. Maybe if I just stayed here the whole night, I thought, she would finally leave me alone. I should never have listened to Alicia and gone to the barn. I should never have ignored my aunt's warnings about the moon and the thinning veil between worlds. Never play hide-and-seek beneath the full moon, because you never knew what else you might be inviting to play with you. The night around me went deathly quiet. I remained huddled in the closet, listening hard to the sounds inside my room. I heard nothing. Maybe she had already left. But then something interrupted the pale stream of moonlight creeping in through the closet doors. I lifted my gaze with a sharp, horrified gasp. A dark, slitted eye was peeking at me through the slats in the door, and a raspy voice whispered from the other side, "Found you."